What do you do on Sundays?
We talk about Cate Blanchett, the acting, the costumes, the awards, but mostly the Blanchett of it all.
Oh, I'm not acting.
You think this is a love affair?
I saw you, Erica. Meeting in the middle.
This is Sundays with Cate, and I'm your host, Murtada Elfadl. Welcome to Sundays with Cate, our podcast series about the films of Cate Blanchett. This is your host, Murtada Elfadl, and today we're talking about Thor Ragnarok, and my guest is writer and critic Joi Childs.
Yay! I'm very excited.
I'm excited too to have you on the podcast. Thank you so much for coming on to talk about Thor Ragnarok.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me. You've had great guests in the past, so I'm very excited to be included in that number. So I am very excited.
The excitement is mutual. And we wanted to talk about Thor. So Cate is known for doing these villain roles in big studio movies. She did Cinderella, she did Indiana Jones and The Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. And then she did Thor. So to supplement, I guess, her theater work and her art movies, she does these big movies where she plays villains. And this was the latest one that she did in 2017. So Thor Ragnarok is from IMDb about Thor, obviously, who was imprisoned on the planet, and he must race against time to return to Asgard and stop Ragnarok, the destruction of his world at the hands of the powerful and ruthless villain Hela. So let me ask you first, Joi, as a reader of comics, are you familiar and did you know Hela before the movie?
I knew of Hela. I will be candid in saying that Thor is not my most favorite comic book character from the Marvel franchise, personally. I did read the Jane Foster Thor run, a bit of it, and really enjoyed it. For those who aren't aware, there was not an alternate universe, but part of the all new, all different Marvel series back when Axel Alonso, if I'm remembering correctly, was editor-in-chief. They did a lot of different new characters assuming the mantle of, traditional characters. So you had Riri, being Ironheart, being the new Iron Man. You obviously had Sam Wilson taking the mantle of Captain America, and you had Jane Foster as the new Thor. And so her storyline was that she actually was suffering from cancer, and when she assumed the power of Mjolnir, which is the hammer, she was able to summon those powers, and she would be essentially healthy at the time that she was Thor. So actually the fourth Thor, it seems, I don't know if they're going to have, there's debates on whether or not they're going to have the cancer storyline in it, but Natalie Portman is coming back in the fourth Thor that will be written and directed by Taika Waititi, Thor Love and Thunder, and she will be playing Jane Foster as Thor. So loosely based on that comic book series.
Oh, cool. I wonder if Hela will be coming back. Maybe not.
Maybe not. I mean, when Ragnarok happened in the movie, we're jumping a little bit, but when Ragnarok happened in the movie, it seemed like it was very definitive that she was dead. Yeah. But you never know. They bring back Loki everywhere and every time, so why not?
Yeah, I think that's a Marvel staple. People come back from the dead.
Pretty much.
So Hela is the Asgardian goddess of death, and she also happened to be the first Marvel Cinematic Universe major female villain. So that was a milestone, I think, when this movie was released about 2.5 years ago.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. I think they picked the right person with Cate. You mentioned it in the intro on she's very good. She's very good as an actress, period, but she has a good penchant for playing, villains. I just think it's her commitment to her craft and her commitment to the roles, no matter how crazy or ridiculous. And I appreciated that and seeing that on screen. I was very excited when it was announced that she was going to be playing Hela. Because originally in the comics, Hela is not actually a sibling of Thor and Loki. She's actually the daughter of Loki. And so I thought it was really interesting that they made them siblings and deviated from the original kind of comic lore. Yeah. But I ended up liking what they did with it. And I thought it was interesting.
And they did give her the Loki look. So the dark hair, very black, and the smoky eyes. So Cate doesn't look like Tom Hiddleston, but they have the same hairdresser, I guess.
Yeah, oh, definitely. That jet black 1B hair that she had was not my favorite thing personally. I don't think it looked good on her. It's just not, it doesn't fit her personality, but I think she pulled it off for the sake of the character.
So I'm going to ask you first, just general impression on Marvel films. Where do you think Thor Ragnarok sort of stacks within the Marvel universe?
Okay, so I'm a big Marvel fan. If anybody who knows me personally or sees me tweet on Twitter, I am a big Marvel Cinematic Universe fan. I've seen all the films.
Which is why you are on this podcast. You're the expert.
Thank you. But yeah, I'm a big Marvel fan. I've been watching the film since 2008. I vividly remember my dad taking me to see the first Iron Man when I was like 16, 17 years old. So it's been a part of my life. It's been a part of my growing up, literally. So very, very excited. So we've had 23 films in total in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. If I'm 23 or 22, I would say this one is. I'd say this is in my top 10. I will say by a long shot, this is the best Thor film. Like, it's not a debate. It is definitely the best Thor film. The first Thor films, if you guys are familiar with, the first one was kind of like a part of the original. You know, Thor was one of the original Avengers in terms of the setting up of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And so they obviously he was like their third, if I'm remembering correctly, their third solo kind of like trilogy. So obviously Iron Man, you had Captain America, and then Thor had his. The first one was very Shakespearean, and a little bit of like fish out of water story of a Norse god being put into like American modern, time frame, hilarity ensues. I think there were things that worked well with it, things that did not work well with it. The dyed eyebrows, God bless Chris Hemsworth, that he had to be subjected to is still an iconic in a bad way. Look for him. We then move on to the Avengers, where Thor as a character was definitely a heavy hitter in terms of his strength, but like not necessarily one that necessarily stood out. He had a very serious demeanor towards him, a bit of haughtiness to him. I am, holier than thou, because he is a god.
Yeah.
And so he worked well with the team. He did not necessarily stand out as a character. Then you get into Thor 2, Thor: The Dark World, which is a terrible film.
Oh, I've seen that. It's so boring.
It's not great. It's definitely like my least favorite Marvel film of all time, probably. Like it's my bottom. I think for the purpose of like introducing that Infinity Stone, great. Everything else you can throw in the trash. The relationship between Thor and Loki is strong in this film. But other than that, man, poor Natalie Portman, she just could not catch a break in terms of getting, proper character development and really having something to do as Jane Foster.
Yeah, I mean, she quit after that one.
Yeah, she was like, I'm done. I got to get out of it. And funny enough, so a fun fact, the second Thor film was actually supposed to be, she actually campaigned hard for the second Thor film to be directed by Patty Jenkins. For those who are listening to the podcast who are not familiar, Patty Jenkins has directed the Wonder Woman solo film, the second one, 1984, which will be coming out soon. So she campaigned hard. I think they were very close to nearing the deal, and then it didn't work. It didn't pan out. So I think that there was just a level of bitterness, understandable bitterness, in terms of that character and her getting a female director behind the behind the screen to really lead and man the ship. But obviously Patty's worked out well for herself. Natalie Portman has her own story career, so everybody's happy.
Yeah.
But it's not until you get into Thor Ragnarok that you get into the reins of now Oscar-winning Taika Waititi.
Let's talk a little bit about Hela. So Hela is introduced 20 minutes into the film. So Kate fans, I'm sorry you have to wait a little bit. And she appears when Odin dies. I mean, he dies because Loki did something wrong, right? But anyway, whatever Loki did frees Hela from this prison that she's been in for millennia. And she comes out and meets her brothers, Thor and Loki, and immediately destroys Thor's hammer. So it is kind of a big impact introduction. It's a star intro. Cate Blanchett is a star. Hela is a major character. She's the villain, so she gets the star treatment.
Absolutely. That breaking of the hammer is super important to that story, right? Mm-hmm. Because Thor has to learn how to be resourceful without literally his major weapon.
So he's gone. It's a shame. I would have liked to have seen that.
You must be Hela. I'm Thor, son of Odin.
Really? You don't look like him.
Perhaps we can come to an arrangement.
You sound like him. Neil.
Beg your pardon.
Neil.
Before your queen.
I don't think so. It's not possible.
Darling, you have no idea what's possible.
Thor is powerful, but like throughout the film, it's about him not only through, brotherhood and adventure and comedy and like humor and all that fun stuff, but like throughout the film, like, Thor is dealing with a lot of loss. Like he's lost many people of his life. Like he thought he lost his brother until, the first 20 minutes of the film, right?
Yeah.
He loses his father in the film, right?
Yeah.
He's lost his love in terms of Jane not being in his life anymore. So all of these moments of loss that he's experiencing, he now must like go and find out in a way like a self-fulfilling like quest of who he is. And the first thing you do with that is, what do? You take away the one thing that gives him a sense of comfort. Oh, also lost his mother in the last film. How can I forget?
Yeah.
And so all this moments of loss, and it's exacerbated. Like his feeling of loss and guilt and grieving is exacerbated in Infinity War and Endgame to the max, right? But you start to see the showings of him cracking under pressure and him trying to move on. And so what do you do when someone needs to go on an adventure of self journey and to know how strong they are without their crutch? You get rid of the thing that is the crutch, and so you get rid of the hammer. And so having Cate remove that, breaking that, it's so powerful, and really sets the tone of the film.
Yeah, and it's such a good scene. You don't expect, because the Thor hammer is such a big thing in the mythology. And so for it to be destroyed within the first half hour of the movie and destroyed by this new character that's being introduced into the universe just tells you she's formidable, which sort of begs the question. The media has kind of said that Marvel has a villain problem for the longest time, but then in the last few years, they introduced Hela, they introduced Thanos, they introduced Killmonger. So do you think that they've solved their villain problem, or maybe they never had one?
So I will say this. I think in the early Marvel films, phase 1 and phase 2, I would say that the villains were forgettable. I think in the most recent phase with Killmonger, Hela, with Thanos, obviously, characters like that, these are definitely more memorable villains. Now, Feige has been on record saying that like the villains are the reason why like a lot of the villains die, or what contributes to a lot of villains dying is the stories are not about them, it's about the heroes.
Yeah.
And I think that is a fair assessment, right? So though we love Hela and Cate is a badass in this film, like the film is ultimately about Thor and Thor's journey. And so, at the end, it's going to be hopefully something that wraps around an arc for him and how he grows as a character. And he does. He turns kingly. He becomes the king that he's supposed to be. Do I think they have much better villains than prior phases? Yes. Does it suck sometimes like good villains don't get to live beyond Loki? Sure. I would say that.
So this actually brings us to my main problem with Hela in this movie, in that she gets this amazing, fantastic introduction. She's the goddess of death. She's stronger than everyone. She's, just all-consuming, smashes the hammer. Her power is all-encompassing. And then she gets sidelined into a completely other movie with Keith Urban as her lackey. And we don't get to see her interact with any of the main cast until she gets one scene with Thor and then the final sort of battle. And that's it, which was my main problem. I'm like, if she's this powerful, why isn't she in more of the story? And then I think maybe Taika was more interested in the buddy comedy between Mark Ruffalo and Chris Hemsworth.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's really what it is. Like once they leave Asgard and they move on to, getting kidnapped, the Taskmaster, Grand Royale, him running into Hulk, him being introduced to Valkyrie that way, all those things, right? Like that takes up the story, right? And you don't really get interaction with Hela until they return back to Asgard to battle her, finally more well equipped, because now, he feels like he has what he needs. So he feels like the power is within him. He's able to fight her correctly. You have thunder coming through his body. It's like, oh, okay, shit. Like, you are now the Thor that we thought you were, right?
Yeah.
And so all those are great. It makes for a great fight scene. You get some great moments. But I can definitely see and understand the criticism of, like, Hela is such a interesting character, and Kate very much commits to it. And so to get sidelined with Carl Urban, it's like,
yeah, it's not that exciting. But
yeah,
she gets a great intro. Like that first scene is great, and then she gets one more scene with Chris Hemsworth's Thor in, is it the throne room, where they sort of fight and they try to one up each other with catchphrases and one-liners and power. And that's like a fun scene, and I would have liked to, I mean, they are antagonists, so it's not like the buddy comedy can be Hela and Thor, but I would just have liked to see maybe, instead of just one scene between them or two scenes, maybe like 5 scenes, something like that.
Sister.
You're still alive.
I love what you've done with the place. Redecorating, I see.
It seems our father's solution to every problem was to cover it up.
Or to cast it out. He told you you were worthy. He said the same thing to me.
You see, you never knew him. Not at his best. Odin and I drowned entire civilizations in blood and tears. Where do you think all this gold came from? And then, one day, he decided to become a benevolent king. To foster peace, to protect life. To have you.
I understand why you're angry, and you are my sister and technically have a claim to the throne. Believe me, I would love for someone else to rule, but it can't be you. You're just the worst.
Okay, get up.
You're in my seat.
Your father once told me that a wise king never seeks out war.
But must always be ready for it.
To be honest, I expected more.
Here's the difference between us. I'm Odin's firstborn, the rightful heir, the savior of Asgard. And you're nothing. So simple. Even a blind man could see it.
Now you remind me of Dad.
I will say, like, if you did a body count of people who have been killed on screen that are villains in the MCU, Hela is right under Thanos. She killed a lot of people in that film.
She did. She's ruthless.
She is. Like, Thanos killed a lot of folks, and to be fair, like, this is across multiple films for him. But, like, Hela is definitely the second most, like, bloodthirsty villain in the MCU.
So I want to ask you something. So I don't follow Marvel as closely, and I don't know as much, but I remember, because I follow Kate, after Thor Ragnarok was released, there was a lot of chatter online that something about her and Thanos meeting in the Avengers, and people were going, oh yeah, Hela's gonna come back. Is there something in the comics about Hela and Thanos?
Yeah, so this version of Hela is the goddess of death. So in the comics, the reason why Thanos is trying to get rid of half the world and destroy half the world and do the snap to make the half the world disappear is because he is trying to court death, the goddess of death, because he's in love with her. And so that's why now this version of Hela is different, where like, again, based on the comics, her recreation of Hela is separate from the goddess of death, and she is the daughter of Loki. So the fact that they combined the two, people were assuming, like, there's a chance that if they make the storyline the the reasoning for Thanos' bloodthirstiness to rid of half the world is because he's trying to court death and he's in love with death and he's essentially trying to impress her, then Hela must come back. They obviously changed the storyline up in Infinity War and Endgame, where that is not his motivations for ridding half the world. It's more so making the world infinitely balanced, perfectly balanced. So they don't use the motivation from the comics.
Oh, got it. Let's talk a little bit about Hela's look. So one of my favorite things in this is her look, like the skin-tight jumpsuit, which the detail that I really loved about that was the bare shoulders, and then the walk, because Cate has this distinctive walk as Hela, and I think that the bare shoulders are accentuated even more by the way she walks. And even though I'm like you, I wasn't a huge fan of the smoky eye makeup, but I really loved the jumpsuit and the bare shoulders.
So the jumpsuit and the helmet are just so damn near comic accurate. Like they really nail the look of Hela with the horns. Gorgeous, very well done. Mm-hmm. And I think Cate, again, because she commits to the role, like leans into it. There's like she's very sinewy in terms of how she walks. It's very snake-like.
Yeah.
And I think it works for the green as she's going with. It's a bit of a slithering movement that she does. You know, very sensual in nature, but not like super so. Like it's a nice balance of sensual, slithering, commanding, powerful. She just works. She nails it. I think the look helps accentuate that.
Yeah, I mean, I love when she's walking and then she throws her hand forward and the swords come out of it. Are they swords? Whatever they come out of their hands, you know, some chopping things.
Yeah, like daggers, whatever those are. Yeah. But like fantastic too. I also thought it might have been a little tip of the hat. This was my thinking, was like when I first saw it in theaters, I thought it might have been a little tip of the hat to her comic book origins of her being the daughter of Loki, because Loki has a scene in the film where he has both daggers come out of his hands.
Oh.
In the final fight scene. So I was like, I don't know if that's a little tip of the hat to the fact that he's done that before. That might just be me looking way too deeply into it, but I did love that movement of just like power, and it's just a stance, and then you have these weapons that will kill you coming out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, she's fun, and she's always a full body performance. Like she acts with her whole body, and you really see it in this film. Like to your point, she committed to this, and you know, every walk, every look, just. It's so much fun to watch her, which is why I wanted to watch her with more than just Karl Urban in Asgard.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's a lot of ground that you got to cover in these films, but I think fair enough. Like she's just, you want to watch. You just want to like watch and like see her move.
Yeah. I wanted also to ask you about Taika Waititi and his irreverent tone and what he brought to Thor. But this was my favorite thing about this movie is the sort of tongue-in-cheek tone of it.
Taika had, very well known for films like The Boy, very well known for films like What We Do in the Shadows. He is very particular in his vision. And by particular, I mean he is ridiculous. And he really punches up the humor and the color in this world. Like, this is Jack Kirby art on a screen. And you not only get his comedy, his vision, his color, really paying homage to the Kirby era of Thor films that look and feel like an acid trip when you're seeing them on a comic book page. But on top of that, you also get certain nods and tips of the hat to his heritage of him being Maori, being of indigenous ethnicity. And so all those things blend into this wonderful medley of someone who understands Thor, the character, and really takes it into a lighthearted way. That energy and that presence that he creates in Thor Ragnarok now carries on into Endgame, now carries on into Infinity War, and we get to see Thor be the Thor that we always knew he could be.
Yes. And so you think that Taika was very influential to Marvel?
Absolutely. Like, for many, many reasons, like he was, if I'm remembering correctly, and y'all drag me if I'm wrong. First of all, Taika was the first person of color to ever direct a Marvel film. and that I think that tracks because Black Panther didn't come out till 2018.
Yeah,
and
right
so,
after this. It was the one after, wasn't it?
Yes. So Black Panther didn't come out till 2018. So in February. So if that's the case, then Taika was the first person of color to ever direct a Marvel film in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, which is a big deal, right?
Yeah.
But, when you think about the new direction and the vision in the future of what Marvel could be, phase 4 and beyond, that's Taika. That's Ryan Coogler. That's directors like that who have a specific vision for these universes and, really take it and run with it, and they do it in their own voice. He also is, a great fun fact, he is also the first director to break the trilogy curse where, Thor had 3 films, Iron Man had 3 films, Captain America had 3 films, but Thor is now getting a 4th film in Love and Thunder. And they have not had a solo film following one of the MCU characters get beyond 3 films.
Wow.
So,
which is funny because Thor has always been, the Thor movies have always been kind of the B movies or even C movies until Thor Ragnarok.
Exactly. So the fact that they are really doing a makeup, because I think they recognize that they underutilized Thor for many years since 2011, 2012 is when the Thor movie came out, I think. Yeah. And so the first Thor movie. So they underutilized him. And the fact that this character has now outlasted all the other trilogy, characters, at the end of, and this is not a spoiler, this film has been out over a year. Y'all keep up with it. But at the end of Endgame,
2 years, 2.5.
Yeah, y'all. At the end of Endgame, Tony Stark is dead. Captain America has gone back in time, and he is now old man. But the original 3 of the 3 powerful leader figureheads of the Avengers, the only one left who is now on a ship going to go to New Adventures is Thor.
Yeah.
And with him and staying on that ship with the Guardians of the Galaxy, he is now going off to lead a new arm of the MCU in the space, dimension. And it's rightfully so because, Asgard was our first real introduction to space in the MCU, but it wasn't utilized well. And so it gave James Gunn the opportunity to really co-opt that and craft that for Guardians of the Galaxy. But the space area and space section of the MCU has always been Thor. That should be Thor's to lead. Yeah. So now that you have him back in his rightful place, getting the respect that he deserves, utilizing him in the right ways in films, now it's time for him to really lean into the space odyssey aspect that we didn't necessarily get until we got to Thor Ragnarok.
Yeah. And yes, Taika is in it too, voicing one of the characters, and then we have the buddy comedy between Thor and the Hulk. And then, somebody we haven't talked about yet is Tessa Thompson as Valkyrie, who also, it's very funny. And so it's as if this is the Marvel comedy. Do you think that you can call it that?
Yeah, I think, what? I wouldn't even say that it's a Marvel comedy. I just think it's a Taika comedy. I just think it just fits his tone of voice very acutely. I think a common feedback point that a lot of people were saying was that there's some folks that really enjoyed it and really loved it, and then there are some people who felt a little bit like it was trying to co-opt a lot of the humor from the Guardians of the Galaxy. I disagree with that. I think that Guardians and Thor Ragnarok have different humor because it's different people writing it. I think Taika's humor is so specific to Taika that while these are two franchise properties that are based in space, I think there is a difference in tone.
Yeah. And I think this is the funniest one. I love the character that Taika, and remind me what his name is, that Taika.
Korg.
Yes, he's so funny.
He's so cool. He's so cute. It's hilarious.
But if there's one performance that's memorable, Cate is great, and I love her. But if there is one performance that's really memorable and one character that really sort of stands out, I think it's Valkyrie. What are your thoughts on Valkyrie?
I think Valkyrie is a fantastic character. I love that we have someone who is within the broader queer community playing a canonically queer character. That is very true. Valkyrie is canonically bisexual in the comics.
Not really in the movie, right?
Not really in the movie, but in the comics, the character is canonically technically bisexual. So it's
Yeah.
like, yo, queer character being played by a queer person. Fucking awesome. Love it. I'm hoping in Love and Thunder, I hope that they do get to be a little bit more open with her queerness and getting to expose that. Tessa has said at San Diego Comic-Con last year that now that, spoiler alert, Valkyrie is now the king of Asgard. She is now looking for her queen. So I don't know if that was just a little like wink, wink, nudge, nudge, or they will actually have some type of storyline in Love and Thunder where she is, you know, dating or on the prowl, dating other women. I would be very happy.
What did you think of her chemistry with Chris Hemsworth?
I think it worked. Like, I think a lot of people thought it was sexual chemistry. I didn't get that from them at all.
Yeah, me neither.
I did not get that energy at all. They just gave me like bro energy. Like, oh, we're both good looking people and we're just out here being, you know, very extremely powerful folks. I don't think Tessa and Chris Hemsworth have romantic energy. I also didn't think they had romantic chemistry in Men in Black either, to be honest.
I didn't see that, so I can't comment.
Yeah, like Men in Black International, I think
were they lovers in that?
No, but they tried to do like a little nod at the end that they were kind of like flirting with each other, and I was like, this is not working out, y'all. It didn't work out for me.
Yeah, I agree with you. In Thor Ragnarok, they are more bros. Like, they're drink buddies or something like that, you know. Or I think the main buddy story here is Thor and Hulk. And, you know, I love Mark Ruffalo. He's one of my favorite actors. And I kind of love that. I thought maybe... Because Mark Ruffalo is one of those people who are so magnetic on screen, just like Cate. And I thought that maybe Chris Hemsworth, who he's gorgeous, but I don't think he's as magnetic on screen as Mark Ruffalo. But I think together he elevated Chris Hemsworth's performance. And I thought it popped in this film more than it usually does.
Yeah, I would say, you know, Chris Hemsworth is very interesting in terms of the Chris's, because I would say out of what is deemed like the four holy trinities of the Chris's, I think probably Hemsworth is maybe the weakest actor.
So who are these three? Tell us.
It should be like 5 in my opinion. So it should be, in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, it's Chris Evans, Chris Hemsworth, Chris Pratt. Chris Evans plays Captain America. Chris Hemsworth obviously plays Thor. Chris Pratt plays Star-Lord, a.k.a. Peter Quill in Guardians of the Galaxy. It should be 5 Chris's, because you also have to include Chris Pine, and my favorite Chris Messina. So
mine too. Love Messina.
Love Messina. So fellow Messina fan, love it. But for the sake of this conversation, the 3 Chris's are the ones within the MCU. I think he's the weakest actor of the 3, if you ask me.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
And I will say, like, his films outside of Thor aren't really engaging to me at all.
Never.
The only time that he ever, I think his best acting role outside of Thor, in my opinion, is Bad Times at the El Royale. Have you seen that film?
I have, yeah. He's all right in that. But again, you know, you don't leave with him as the memorable performance in it.
No, but like he does do a surprisingly good job as a cult leader. I don't know who else to describe it, but like I thought that was a pleasant turn for him. We'll see how he does in the future, like post Thor, because he's not gonna be playing Thor forever. I think his time in that role has an expiration date, just like Robert Downey Jr. did and Chris Evans did.
Yeah. Chris Hemsworth always tries to be funny, like he was in Ghostbusters. He was in other movies where he was trying to be funny. And this always reminds me of that Billy Eichner joke about Cate. Actually, he had a joke where he would run around and ask people about Cate Blanchett, and he'll be like, is she good or is she tall? And my question is about Chris Hemsworth is he funny or is he just hot? Because people are always trying to tell me, oh, he's so funny. And I'm like, no, maybe he's just hot. You like looking at him.
So I actually do think that he has very good comedic timing. I will say that I do think people are pleasantly surprised by his comedic timing because he's hot.
Yeah. Yes. Maybe that's what it is. Yes.
Yes. So you're so good looking and you're funny too. Like, how did you strike gold with this? But no, I do think that, funny enough, I do think that he has really great comedic timing. I think comedy is actually his strong suit. Like if he wanted to do comedy strictly in the comedy genre after playing Thor, and he hangs up his hammer, I think he'd do really well in it. He's actually talented in a comedic space, weirdly enough.
Yeah, so I guess maybe he just needs the right script and the right director who can hone those funny chops.
Yep, and I think Taika is one that I think really realized that, because I think Ghostbusters, he's really good. MIB, though, I was very lukewarm on the film. I still think he's funny in the film. But, like, films like Thor Ragnarok, you get to... People walked out of that film saying a lot of great things about a lot of different people. But there are a lot of people who did walk out of that film and be like, yo, Chris Hemsworth is funny?
Yeah, he always gets that. It's always a surprise to people, even though he has made a few comedies now, so...
But it's not... it's comedies that nobody really saw. Like, that's the thing. Like, not a lot, like seeing people, a Thor film on a global scale, like, people walked out, I walked out, I was like, shit, he's funny. Huh.
You are listening to Sundays with Cate, the podcast series about the films of Cate Blanchett. Don't miss the 3-part miniseries about her Oscar-winning performance in Blue Jasmine. 3 episodes, 3 guests, 3 perspectives. In part 1, we discuss Cate Blanchett as the real auteur of Blue Jasmine and the many ways her performance makes her the author of the film. In part 2, we talk about the similarities to Tennessee Williams as Streetcar Named Desire, the character of Blanche Dubois, clearly the blueprint for Jasmine, the many actresses who played Blanche or were inspired by her, from the women in Pedro Almodovar's movies to Jenna Rollins in Woman Under the Influence to most recently Carey Mulligan in Wildlife. And in the third and final part, we discuss Jasmine and her sisters, Annie Hall, Helen St. Clair in Bullets Over Broadway, Maria Elena in Vicky Cristina Barcelona, and Cecilia in The Purple Rose of Cairo, among others. All these episodes are now available wherever you listen to podcasts or at sundayswithkate.com. If you're enjoying the podcast, please rate and review. Now back to Sundays with Cate. So I talked earlier, if we go back talking about Cate Blanchett, I talked earlier a little bit about how Cate always plays villains in these big studio movies. So she has played villains not just in Thor Ragnarok, but in Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull and in Cinderella. And these are sort of 3 different villains, but in all these movies, she leans into the camp a lot. Like you see in these movies, she has a certain look, whether it is the smoky eyes here or the severe black bob in Indiana Jones or the red hair and the Joan Crawford shoulders in Cinderella. So it's a collaboration between her and the makeup artist and the costume designer to come up with these characters. And then she leans into it also with the body movement. So in Indiana Jones, her body was sort of very chopped movements. It was somebody who was very severe, and the accent was also very severe and chopped. Here, she has, I think it's a British accent, but the movement is fluid, but also very noticeable. I'm like entrapped by, when I see her trying to create these characters. And so I wanted to ask you, which of these do you think is your favorite? Or which one do you think was the most successful as a villain?
That's a good question. Damn, I don't know. I'm gonna say for the sake of the conversation, since we've been talking about it a lot, and I would have to rewatch the other 2 because it's been a while. Hela, I think when it comes to the campiness, I think what Cate does well is, we've been saying this, consistently through this episode, she just leans into the role. Like, it's not just her saying the lines, the way her body contorts to make these movements, the accents that she does, her walk, her stride, like she does all of that to help assist, obviously, like the great hair and makeup and the great hair and makeup team for Indiana Jones and Cinderella and of course for Thor, but she leans into the role. So what I loved about Hela was Cate being of a certain age, getting to play that type of character is a big deal, right? Because she is an older woman, and to be able to have that opportunity to play ball and play a villain who is fully invested in her sensuality and her movements and her bloodthirstiness, I think that's probably why I like that role the best.
Yeah, and it's also like she's very fun in Cinderella, but also in Cinderella she's the stepmom, so she's already defined by her relationship to Cinderella and to her daughters, and here she is sort of not defined by any relationship to any other character. She is just the ultimate bad villain and the most powerful, supposedly most powerful person in this universe.
Yeah, absolutely.
I do think that, Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, and we did an episode of that, so go listen to that one. It doesn't have a good reputation as a movie. People don't like that movie, but I think her performance there is really great, and it's sort of building on a lot of inspirations, campy inspirations from Lot Linnea to other villains throughout the years. And I think here, what I like about her as Hela is that this, to me, seems she didn't actually draw on other movie characters or was inspired by other actors in the history of cinema, but she was more inspired by the comic book, obviously, because this is a comic book movie. And so her work here is interesting to me because it is, I think, unlike other things she has done. Because sometimes you can see the references in her work, and here it is a unique character that she created.
Yep. And, we talked a little bit about that, but the beauty of the MCU is that you get these prestige actors willing to wear ridiculous costumes and just have fun for a couple of days. You know what I mean? Act a fool for a month, essentially. And, Cate is a very award-winning actress, multiple award-winning actress. To get her level of just talent on the screen to play a character that is a comic book character and get her in those horns and get her, even though those horns are CGI, but get her in those horns, get her in the skin tight suit with the shoulders out, get her to do all these ridiculous things and play in Taika's world. That's actually very impressive. And that's shows a lot about how she is someone who is very focused on the range and breadth of her work.
Mm-hmm. And I read an interview with her, which was very funny, about why she took this role. And she said that, she's usually asked to carry the emotional weight of films. And this time she just wanted to have fun with Taika. And I guess that's a great way why she took this role. Because if she does Blue Jasmine or Carol or Truth or all these other movies where she is doing so much emotionally, or she's playing Blanche Dubois on stage. This time she's just having fun. And I guess it was a fun experience for her to work with Taika. And I do hope maybe if she doesn't come back to the next Thor, that's fine. But maybe she and Taika can do something else in the future.
I hope so too. It seemed like she just had a ball. And you know what? When you're a queen of acting and you just want to take a break and just have a little fun, I'm so for it. Go have some fun.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is a fun performance. And the movie is a lot of fun, and I think what we talked about sort of proved that.
It's come to my attention that you don't know who I am. I am Hela, Odin's firstborn, the commander of the legions of Asgard,
The rightful heir to the throne and the goddess of death.
My father is dead, as are the princes. You're welcome. We were once the seat of absolute power in the cosmos. Our supremacy was unchallenged, yet Odin stopped at 9 realms. Our destiny is to rule over all others, and I am here to restore that power. Kneel before me and rise into the ranks of my great conquest.
Whoever you were, whatever you've done, surrender now, or we will show you no mercy.
Whoever I am, did you listen to a word I said?
This is your last warning.
I thought you'd be happy to see me.
I just want to say Thor Ragnarok is a fantastic film, the best out of the Thor trilogy. We're about to go into a 4th Thor film for Love and Thunder. I don't think I don't remember where they have it on the slate currently for when it's coming out. But I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to now Oscar-winning Taika Waititi to get back into the driver's seat, like, you know, really lean into this world that he's crafted. And yeah, I'm excited.
Let's do it. Let's go back a little bit to the favorite Chris's. So we talked about Hemsworth, Pine, Evans, and we both agreed that our favorite is Messina.
Correct.
So tell me about Chris Messina. Where have you liked him and where have you loved him? Because I don't, you know, my problem with Chris Messina is always I think he's the best Chris, but I can't actually pinpoint one performance or one movie. Maybe the Mindy Kaling show is where he was at his best. What is it for you?
Yeah, the first time I got really introduced to Chris Messina was Mindy Project. That's the first time I ever watched him, and I was like, this very gruff dude who could dance very well and like has great comedic timing. Yeah. He's very good looking. And then I realized that like I've seen a lot of stuff that Chris Messina is in. I just didn't know it was Chris Messina, right? Like you got Julie and Julia, or you have like, yeah, you know, like, or there's this other film that was called like The Tin Man or something like that he was in with Jenna Fisher, which I really enjoyed, or 28 Hotel Rooms, which was this like very indie film that he did fantastic in. Obviously, he's in Birds of Prey, playing Victor Zsasz, and like he's fantastic in that too. And he fully leans in like this crazy character. And so, yeah, like I just think he is, again, a character that has shown a lot of range. I think he is a character who has a lot of talent. And I think he often is forgotten because he's immersed himself in a lot of different roles. And, you know, oftentimes like films that you've seen that you've liked, 9 times out of 10, Chris Messina is in it low-key.
Yes, and he's in a lot of movies. I was just looking, and he was in Sharp Objects, and he was so good with Amy Adams in that, which, you know, like you said, he was in Julie and Julia with her.
And then also he's in this new season of, what is it called? The Sinner on USA. He's on that. And yeah, so he's always working. He's never not working. So
Chris Messina, our love to you. You're our favorite Chris.
Absolutely.
I usually ask all my guests on the podcast about Cate Blanchett. And so, do you remember what was the first time that you saw Cate in a movie?
Yeah, my first time I saw Cate in a movie, I'm definitely aging myself because I am a baby. I'm only 28. So a lot of her well-known films, like The Talented Mr. Ripley, you know, like Elizabeth, I was under 10 years old, so I did not see those films. But the first time I actually saw Cate on screen, I was just like, who is that? Is The Aviator. 2004 is The Aviator. The Howard Hughes biopic directed by Martin Scorsese, and she plays Katharine Hepburn. And she, when we talk about camp, masterclass in camp.
She's great in that film.
Fantastic. And I remember walking out of there being like, yo, who is that? Like, who is that woman really killing it? Obviously, you know, we know Carol. Obviously, she's been in, you know, Lord of the Rings. She's been in all these other different franchises. But that's the film I think when I think about like the talent of Cate Blanchett. It's her as Katharine Hepburn in The Aviator.
Yeah, it's a great performance, and she won the Oscar for it. So
absolutely.
What is your favorite performance of Cate's?
Can I just, I don't want to like cheat, but like her role in Katharine Hepburn is really good, guys.
She's great. That's a good choice. Really, it's a good choice, Joy.
She won an Oscar for a reason. Also, her role in Carol, fantastic also. But yeah, Katharine Hepburn, I was, you know what, like in preparation for this might be like distance bias because in preparation for the podcast, I would just rewatch clips on YouTube of her role as Katharine Hepburn in The Aviator, and I was just like, wow, this is still as dynamic as it was when I remember seeing it. And I'm gonna it might be because I just watched the clips, but I'm going to say her role in Katharine Hepburn in The Aviator.
Yeah. And you know what I love about The Aviator is one of my guests in the previous episode about Blue Jasmine, Matthew Eng, said that what he likes about Cate is that she's someone who is not afraid of being caught acting. And in that movie, Katharine Hepburn is an icon. You can't not do the things that we are very familiar with Katharine Hepburn doing. And that to me is such a daunting task because she is exaggerating what Katharine Hepburn is doing And at the same time, she's playing it campy, she's playing it big, she's doing the voice, she's doing the walk, she's doing everything. And this is where some people are turned off, because this is not subtle work. It's in-your-face acting. And it's what I love about her performances, which includes Hela.
Yeah, Matt is spot on, right? Like, I think what's so dynamic about her role as Catherine in The Aviator is, like, you get full... what you expect an imitator to do of Katharine Hepburn, Kate like leans into it, right? Mm-hmm. Like she fully leans into the voice. And when she first has the conversation with Howard Hughes and they're on the links, and she was like, you know, something about like Hollywood young boy, and then she does the ha ha ha, like she does all of these like weird moments, and you're just like, oh, you're fully leaning into it. But as you're peeling back the layers throughout the film, as their relationship starts to crumble, right? Mm-hmm. And she starts becoming, the hair starts becoming a little bit more dimmer, and her makeup starts becoming a little bit more natural. It's no more of the red lip. Like, she starts really not acting while still playing strips and bits and pieces of who Katharine Hepburn is. So she does like a deconstructing of her throughout the film. It's a marvel to watch. If you've never seen The Aviator, please watch it.
Yeah. It's such a great performance. I agree with you that, later on she starts showing you the person instead of the icon.
Exactly.
It's so beautiful. So let me ask you, who is your favorite Cate Blanchett scene partner?
Ooh, Cate Blanchett scene partner. Damn, that's hard. Because she's been in like 50 goddamn movies.
She made so many, yeah.
She made so many. Damn, that's hard because, again, okay, I'm going to say Rooney Mara in Carol. Mm-hmm. I think that is such a beautiful movie. I think that, again, Rooney and Kate do a fantastic job. But, I'm always down for like non-traditional love stories, because love stories are extremely cliche and very tiring. But I just think that their relationship worked so well together. And so I'm going to cheat and say Rooney Mara.
Rooney Mara is a great answer. And it is the most common answer, but that's because they are fantastic together.
Yes. So I don't feel bad about my cliche answer then. Yes, Rooney Mara and her in Carol is fantastic. Again, and another thing that I enjoy is that, like, Kate, as she's gotten older, is another thing. Again, she's a leaner, like she leans in as an actress, right? Mm-hmm. But I think she, in her recent roles, really leans into her age and her being an older woman. And I love that she doesn't shy from it. She doesn't try to mask it. She picks roles that are, again, beyond range, but really lean into those age differences with some of her scene partners, or really leans into the fact that she's an older villain in a like a Thor, and she's going to be in this new show Miss America on Hulu coming up soon, and she's playing an older villain. Oh my God, like so much.
One of the most vile people ever.
So much, but I'm looking forward. I know she's going to make me mad because she's good at her job. So I know she's going to kick ass in the role. But again, like I loved it. I love that difference in her being a seasoned woman in Carol, and I appreciate that with her relationship with Rooney Mara in the film. So I'm going to say Rooney Mara.
Yeah. So who would you like to see her work with?
Who hasn't she worked with, I think, is a better question. I mean, she's been working for a long ass time.
She has worked with a lot of people. It could be a repeat. Maybe it's somebody you've already liked her with.
You know what? I'm going to throw this randomly out there. I think Dee Reeds would do a great job directing directing Cate Blanchett.
I would love to see that.
I would love a drama directed by Dee Reeds with Cate Blanchett in it.
Yes. Dee Reeds, if you're listening, do that, please, for us.
Yep. The reason why I say that is that, like, Dee Reeds did a fantastic job in Mudbound, and I think of a similar actress in terms of who leans into their roles, Carey Mulligan, in that movie. So great. I think that is up Kate's wheelhouse. Dee Reeds directed film with Cate Blanchett. I'm in it.
Yeah.
I'm into it.
I want to see it. Joi, this was a joy to talk to you about Thor and about Kate. Thank you so much for doing it. And
thank you.
why don't you tell our listeners where they can find you and your work? And you have a podcast that you just launched. So tell us about that too.
Yeah. So you guys can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Jump for Joy, JUMPEDFORJOI with an I. I really tweet about films, usually bothering people like Murtada and us talking about broader film Twitter shenanigans. That's what we do on there. I also did start a podcast called The Color Grade. The Color Grade is looking at films from a diverse lens. Obviously, I am the host, so it's coming from my cishet Black woman perspective, but I have wonderful guests, like folks like Kate B, folks like Trey Mangum, who's the deputy editor of Shadow and Act, and we come and we play. We've done like our beta test of a few episodes. I think we're released like 9 or 10 at this point as you guys are listening. Currently on Apple and Spotify, all centering around films that premiered at Sundance. So yeah, please listen. Definitely listen to this podcast as well. It is a fantastic podcast. I love that it's so specific and nuanced to Cate Blanchett. And honestly, you can have this podcast running for 1 billion years because she's been in that much stuff. Genuinely.
She's been in a lot of movies. Listen to The Color Grade. Thank you, Joy. You can find me on Twitter at ME_says and follow the podcast on Twitter and Instagram at Sundays with Kate. And until next time,